Sam inherited his grandfather's house after his death. It was an old building filled with dust and silence, and Sam decided to spend the weekend sorting through things in the attic. The attic turned out to be a real warehouse of old things. Boxes of photographs, yellowed books, broken furniture. Among all this, he found an old radio. Its case was wooden with carved patterns, and the control knobs looked surprisingly new despite the age of the device. Sam wiped it from dust and decided to check if it worked. "I wonder what you can offer me, old man," he muttered with a smile. He plugged the radio into the outlet, and surprisingly it worked. The needle of the frequency indicator began to move, and a faint crackle came from the speaker. Sam twisted the tuning knob, trying to catch the radio station. At some point, he heard a faint melody reminiscent of an old jazz composition. But after a few seconds, the melody faded and a whisper was heard. "Sam?" The voice was quiet, barely audible, but it clearly said his name. Sam froze. "What the hell?" He turned the dial, trying to find another station, but the voices continued. Description. Now it was not one, but several voices. They sounded at the same time, overlapping each other. "Sam, we know you," came from the speaker. Sam recoiled, his heart pounding. This did not sound like a radio broadcast. The voices sounded like they were speaking directly from the radio and not from the air. "Who is it?" he shouted, but in response there was only a soft laughter that echoed through the attic. The next day, Sam decided that the previous day's events were just fatigue and his imagination, but the radio was bothering him. It stood in the corner of the room, as if waiting to be turned on again. End. Sam couldn't help himself. He turned the dial again. At first, there was the usual hissing, but soon the voices appeared again. This time they were clearer. "Sam? Do you remember us?" The voice was soft, but there was an ominous note in it. Sam frowned. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. The answer was quick, as if the voices were waiting for his question. "We've always been here. We've been watching you." "Is this some kind of prank?" Sam shouted, but deep down he knew it wasn't. Instead of an answer, the radio began to hiss, and words cut through the noise. "Remember that accident?" he thought. No one saw. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. It had been long ago, in his youth. He had hit an old man on the road on a rainy night and fled the scene. No one would ever know. "How do you know?" he whispered. The voices continued. "We know everything, Sam. About you, about your secrets, about how it will end." "What do you mean, end?" he screamed, feeling panic rising in him. The radio went silent, but a moment later a woman's voice came on, quiet and sad. "You will die alone." Sam recoiled, nearly knocking over the radio. Every day when he turned on the radio, the voices grew louder. They told him details about his life, events he wanted to forget, moments he hid from everyone. And they talked more and more about his death, about how and where it would happen. "In the old house, alone," they whispered, as if enjoying his fear. "And no one will hear you." The radio was no longer just a thing. It lived its own life, becoming more and more creepy and close. That night, Sam couldn't sleep anymore. The radio in the corner of the room seemed to have a life of its own. It wasn't turned on, but Sam could hear quiet whispers coming from it, even with the lid closed. Sam tried to turn off the light and fall asleep, but the whispers grew louder. He got out of bed to throw the radio away, but his feet were rooted to the floor and his hands were shaking, refusing to obey. "Sam?" the voice said, louder and clearer than ever. "What do you want?" he shouted, but the only answer was a quiet laugh. The radio turned on by itself. Its dark speaker crackled, making sounds that seemed to merge into words. "Join us, Sam," the voices said. You won't be alone here in this place." Sam felt the room around him begin to fade. Everything but the radio went dark. He could hear his heart pounding, but it felt like his body wasn't his anymore. "No," he croaked. "I don't want it." "You're already with us, Sam," one of the voices whispered. At that moment, he realized that his own voice was coming from the radio. "Help, someone?" The voice repeated his words, but it sounded distant, like it was from another world. Sam realized that he no longer felt himself. He was here and there at the same time, inside the radio, becoming part of those voices. His body was gone, dissolved in the cold silence, and his essence became an echo that repeated itself over and over again. Now, when someone turned on the old radio, Sam's voice was among the others. He whispered stories, called out the names of those listening, and waited for the new owner to join him.